because the Book of Enoch is in majority of what you told me, and even in the previous podcast, is that so the Book of Enoch, mostly talks about giants, right?
Well, in general terms, it doesn't only talk about giants. It talks a lot about, okay, the beings that exist in the other realm, right? I mean, you have different words for this other realm. Scriptures in English translated as heavens, right? But it tells you in the book of Enoch that there's heavens you see in the sky, but then there's the ones you don't see, right? And there's a whole world you don't see. You can call it dimensions, you can call it heavens, you can call it the astral world,
right?
Astral Age,
or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
It's all this. It's all talking about the same thing. And then in that realm, which is, I mean, it's not like some hallucinatory realm that's in your mind. It's actually, I use the analogy of, to understand it, you have to understand what a bacteria feels like when you're looking at it, right? It's in this whole, the bacteria world is this whole other realm, and they have absolutely no concept
of us
human beings. Yeah, they can't even wrap their little bacteria brain around that, and it would just blow their mind. And that's kind of like how we are to the beings in that other realm, right? Which you can, the Bible again translates it as angels, but you can change that term to the gods, which were the angels who accepted the worship of man, were the fallen angels. So you have angels who don't take worship from man, okay, but the ones that do, which breaks the order of the universe and the law of God, when they accept worship, those become the gods that men worship.
Okay, like let's say Greek mythology, right, and the whole concept of Mount Olympus. They kind of were talking about it as a physical place. So, I mean, I know you kind of just answered that question, but to you, would you say, for certain that it's its own physical place, but with completely different properties that we cannot, even comprehend?
So because I'm not that familiar with it. Mount Olympus was like the mountain of the gods, right? That was the story.
Right,
okay.
Right.
Well, that reminds me immediately in the record of Enoch about Mount Hermon, because there's a phenomenon when you look into the concept of portals and UFOs and things like that. They tend to congregate in certain areas that are highly strange, and they can be called portal areas. It's like places in the world, usually very high up on mountains, where you can call it the veil, between our realm and the other side. It's thinner, and strange things will happen, supernatural things will happen, things will literally come through doorways, sometimes like literal portals. Things will come out of them. And so these types of regions that are spiritually charged like this, one of them was a mountain called Mount Hermon in the book of Enoch. And that's actually when the fallen angels who created the giants fell, they fell on Mount Hermon. You understand?
Where is that?
Do you see the similarity?
Where is that geographically?
They say that it's in Israel today, in Palestine, right? And I believe it is, because even Christ, he went up to that mountain once time in I forget which book, but he went up to the mountain and he said, the gates of evil.
Oh, okay.
He said the gates of evil will not prevail against my people, right? So there was a gates, another word for portal, right, on this Mount Hermon that he was referencing. That was the same mountain in the book of Enoch where these quote unquote beings, or gods as the Greeks called them, came down. And that's where I think that mythology, that common understanding comes from. Right. Because really we all came from Noah, right? So Noah taught his sons that basic story about the mountain, the beings that came down, the giants. That basic story is embedded in every culture because we all came from the same father. We just took that story to different parts of the earth.
Yeah, and gave it different names and shit like that.
Yeah.
What about like, and I know again we touched on this, but the like going back to the heavens concept again, book of Ezekiel, right? Like Ezekiel talks about an actual chariot or whatever, right? With golden wheels or whatever. Like what that's where it gets a little confusing. Is that some sort of diversion that, you know, these giants or angels or extra dimensional beings would present to the humans? Or, you know, like, why is there always this concept of either flying, you know, saucers or chariots, or like where does that come into this?
There's several references in the Hebrew books to the chariots of the sky, the chariots of the angels, things like that. And obviously, you know, ancient mind had no concept of airplanes or cars. The only vehicle they knew of was a chariot. So if they saw a vehicle in the sky, that's their only point of reference, right? Makes sense. So that they're talking about the same technology we're seeing with so-called UFOs. They're seeing it at that time, right? Vehicles.
Right, but that my point was that, you know, they're not just talking about these beings, you know, like if you were to think, you know, beings coming from a different dimension, like you mentioned before, you know, I would think of a portal. So I wouldn't automatically think of them as having to need any kind of, you know, a UFO or, you know, a flying anything. You know, they would just kind of appear through this portal. So that's basically what my question was. You know, that's where my confusion is why are, you know, there are, you know, depictions and drawings, let's say, or carvings of like flying something. Like, you know, are these extra dimensional beings or giants or whatever you want to call them, are they using some kind of flying mechanisms? And like,
Yes,
you know what I mean?
yeah, they are, yeah, to some degree, yeah. You know, I think especially the weaker member, there's a hierarchy, right? Like in this other realm with the, you know, the one of many names, the devil, Satan, the great dragon, that chief ruler over all these other fallen beings. He has a hierarchy under him. And I think a lot of the weaker beings, especially the ones that they don't have a body to inhabit, like the demonic type beings, they put them in these flesh suits, like these little UFO flesh suits, and they shoot them out in these UFOs to do different kind of business, you know. But I think the more powerful beings, the actual quote unquote godlike beings, they have powers like, you know, they don't need to necessarily use technology like that.
No, that actually makes sense. And again, Ezekiel talked about of actually going up to wherever, or going over to wherever, and actually spending like a lot of time there, 500 or 5,000 years or something like that. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the time period, but if you're talking about the spinning wheels, that thing, am I correct?
Yeah. Well, you know, Ezekiel talked about of this chariot coming down, spinning wheels, but he talks about that it took him to this other place, to the heavens, and he spent time there.
I believe that he was taken because you have higher levels and lower levels of these realms. And as far as I remember, he was taken to like the throne room of the Most High, the Almighty, to that level. And he was kind of seeing that, and he was trying to describe that. And I think it's very confusing because the things you see in that realm don't make any sense in the context of day-to-day life. Like, you know, we can only describe things based on what we know on Earth, like water and wind, but you get into that realm and you start seeing things that don't make sense to your mind.
You call different physical properties and everything, right? Concept of everything just disappears as far as our world goes, right?